Hey, welcome to our session. My name is Elhan. I'm a cloud marathoner, and we have Azure Greg.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Greg City, also known as Azure Greg.
Awesome. And thank you, Azure, actually, agreeing to be here in the studio to record this together because I really like the Azure Greg. He was one of the, first community leaders that actually I look like a role model, being honest. But what is this session about, right? What we are going to cover here? Maybe you are interested. You may have those questions naturally. So we'll start. I would say that this community, how you can amplify what you are doing to the community and let the community know about you, and as well as how you can, get break into IT field, right? So how you can get into that dream job that you are dreading about, or how you can upskill yourself, and as well as because we are a bit geeky here, right? We are Microsoft MVPs at the end, and we are in Azure. We'll talk about infrastructure as a code, not like a technology part, but why your company needs that, why your organization needs that. And is it a technology we are talking about, or it's a cultural change? So you will learn all about this.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to this. Yep.
Good, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think you are excited because we are
I'm
excited.
excited.
So
Yeah.
well, let's give it a
Let's do it.
start. Okay. All right.
Mm.
Let's go then. All right. We already kind of introduced, but before going like too far through that, let me introduce Azure Greg so he can speak a little bit words about himself. Uh, so Azure,
Yeah.
so Greg,
So
how you would go with that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for first of all, thank you for inviting me to this session. Hopefully everyone enjoys it. Yeah. My alias is Azure Greg. My name is Gregor City. I am an Azure MVP. I currently reside in Scotland, so that's Western Europe for people who aren't really sure where that is. Um, I'll try and speak slowly today so that
Yeah. So
everyone can.
so we can catch what you are saying there,
Yeah,
right?
my accent is
Yeah.
very difficult to understand, so we'll try and speak slowly. My
Yeah.
main background is I used to be a .NET developer many years ago. I've been kind of doing this for, I think this is my 30th year in
Nice.
IT, so I'm feeling old. And now I'm an Azure architect. I would like to give a shout out to my company Intercept, who pay for me to come to the MVP Summit, and that's where we are today recording this.
Yeah.
So big shout out to them and thank them for paying for my flight and hotel and allowing me to come here and take some time off. So yeah, you want to say anything about your company as well?
Yeah. So I also go as a cloud marathoner, in the community. I encourage people to learn and, upskill themselves. Uh, in background wise, actually it's similar what Greg did. I started as a software developer in early in my career, and then later on I became a Microsoft certified trainer. So I've been like more than 17 years now teaching and helping the people to upskill.
How long have you been an MCT trainer?
MCT itself, yeah, I started in 2007 actually.
Oh well,
Yeah, I
cool.
2007, and here's the fun part, right? Even though I'm not originally from United Kingdom, my first Microsoft certification I earned in United Kingdom.
All right, did
Yeah,
not know
and
that.
it was 2006.
No, well, that's I
Yeah,
did not know that.
yes, that happened there. Yeah, a lot of strange things happened to you, believe it. But in terms of like being here, I'm working for a local company in DMV area, T-Rex Solutions. I want to say big thank you for them because they also sponsored my trip here to the MVP Summit, and I really like to work with the people and customers that we are serving there. We are serving mission critical services to our customers, and I really appreciate providing support in sharing all this good stuff with the community and making sure that it helps people. uh, so that said, let's move forward here,
Yeah,
Greg.
yeah, yeah. What do you want to
So
talk about next?
yeah, what do you want to what would be the next topic that you want to share here?
So I am an infrastructure. Part of my MVP status is infrastructure as code.
Yeah,
So do you want to talk about a little bit about that?
yeah, sure. Like as an infrastructure as a code, when we speak about that, uh, in Azure environment, at least,
Mm-hmm.
how it started, like there's a code piece of it and there's like culture piece of it.
Yeah.
So if you look at the code and technical part, initially started as part of the ARM templates and the JSON structure that
Mm-hmm.
we have there, infrastructure as a code, but it was not infrastructure as a code. It was representation of the infrastructure with JSON
Mm-hmm.
representation.
Yeah.
Then later on, there were new tools came around, and maybe you heard about Terraform, right? So Terraform looked and feel like infrastructure as a code, but was not the native Microsoft tool there, right? You would have to use providers and you have dependencies. it's a hustle. It's
What's
something that
w-
you have to manage.
let's
Yeah.
go back. I'll take a step back.
Yes.
What do you feel are the benefits of infrastructure?
Infrastructure code. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great one.
Yeah.
So I think there's a very big benefits. The first benefits, it's a cultural shift in terms of, you know, making sure that you are focusing on accountability, you are focusing on version control,
Mhm.
and you are making sure that there's a way how you can recreate the same thing with minimal effect. So
You're
basically,
talking
automation part of
you're
it.
talking about environments. Yeah.
Yes.
So you can deploy
Mhm.
resources to Azure and development,
Yes.
test, and production,
Yes.
that kind of thing.
So it's basically reusing your
Mhm.
deployment across different
Okay.
environments, make it easy, and so that you can test it easily, right? So it
Yep.
makes your life easy. And when we say your life, we actually mean the customers that you are serving,
Yeah.
right? That's part of it. Anything else you would like to add?
Well, we see where I work, we see a lot of customers who have deployed their Azure
Mhm.
resources and they don't have any infrastructure as code. So the idea here behind infrastructure as code is you represent your Azure deployments and your resources, your subscriptions as code. And the benefit here is you can quickly spin up a test environment,
Yes.
as a dev environment, a production environment. So it's the same code that you use for each environment. The only change might be the variables.
Yeah.
So some customers have already got their resources in Azure, and you need to kind of reverse engineer that into Bicep or Terraform, which is a nice thing to have. Well, let's say a customer comes to my company and says, "We are in West Europe. We
Mhm.
really would like to move to a different region."
Right.
At the moment, that's really difficult. So the
Yeah.
benefit here is you can kind of convey their deployment, their
Mhm.
deployed environment in code, and then they can use that code to redeploy the whole environment to another region. So that's always a good example of infrastructure as code.
Yeah, I'll just add something to that. It's really good. It's from real world perspective, like when you're working with the customers, the the I would say benefit number one is that if the region fails and there's like catastrophic disaster happening, and you need to move those workloads in a short time and recreate that in a region that's available, that's the best thing that you can do. And that usually happens when customers wants to save on the cost, because there is a way that you can have this active, deployment of systems where if something goes bad in one region, you have another region which is maybe 600 miles away, and because you plan for it, the customer would not feel anything, but that's costly to run. It means that you need to set it up, and customer needs to pay for it. That's why infrastructure as a code can alleviate some of those pain points, and that's where I believe each of the IT professionals need to spend some cycles and understand the approach there.
Yeah, I would also like to talk about
Mhm.
other benefits of infrastructure as code,
Yes.
things like getting away from ClickOps.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
ClickOps is all about deploying a customer's resources by hand and actually clicking in the portal.
Yes.
That's very difficult to reproduce. So you
And it's
sometimes
error prone.
very error prone, right?
Yeah.
You could be setting up something very complicated on Monday, and then you go on holiday for 2 weeks and come
Mhm.
back, and then you need to set it up in a different environment, and you've
Yes.
forgotten what you've clicked. So
Definitely.
yeah, and infrastructure as code moves away from that. So you have a deployment pipeline. You deploy the code to the resources to the environment. Normally one or two clicks kind of thing. Using a pipeline, and you benefit from getting away from ClickOps is one of
Yes.
the big things. Also raises standards.
Yeah.
Because you can reference your code, you can put it into repo, put it into Azure DevOps or GitHub repository, for example, code review it all, get it checked.
Yes.
Do all sorts of testing on it before you actually deploy it. So you're raising standards. It's a bit like unit testing .NET code, for example. You're kind of
Yes.
making the code more
Right.
robust. But it's a good example of what you were saying is if an environment goes down
Mhm.
and you want to move to another environment really quickly. Thankfully, regions don't go down too often,
Yes.
but if they ever do, infrastructure as code is super helpful for that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that thing was even more, before the Azure moved to the clouds and, these cloud solution providers, it was even bigger problem because when you deal with data centers, things can go easily wrong. And at that point, recovery point was pretty lengthy and customers were not happy with that. That was the reason why, this cloud adoption was so fast. That's another point of it.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And raising standards is very important. Like when we say about raising standards, also adding the quality in the process, right?
Mhm.
That's where infrastructure as a code process will add the quality into
Oh,
your
yeah.
deployments.
You've
Yeah.
also got Microsoft writing things like Bicep and Terraform templates that you can
Mhm.
make, like the Azure Verified Modules is a good
Yes.
example. And to say we make use of what's called the Azure Verified Modules, which is a GitHub project
Yeah.
written by Microsoft people and community. and it's all best practice, and you can leverage that to help you deploy resources faster.
Yeah.
Because all you'd have to do is use their template and call the template. You don't have to set up all the settings.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's pretty good.
And by the way, if you speak about some projects here, but you never heard about it, that's totally natural.
Yep.
So don't get intimidated by that. We are going to put the links in our video in the description so that you can look at those, concepts and everything, and the links so that you can get familiar with that. So don't get intimidated with
Yeah,
that.
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So let's do that.
yeah,
Let's make
absolutely.
sure that people can get that
Mhm.
benefit.
Yeah,
Okay,
yep.
great.
Sounds
Let's
good.
move on. Next here, we talked about the benefits. Now, other thing is like, okay, there are like good things that we talked about,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And what about the anti-patterns, where it's perceived
Yeah, I mean,
wrongly?
well, let's talk about good things first of all. Governance. What's your thoughts on governance? If I say to you, I want to implement governance as let's say I'm the customer and
Yeah.
you're the supplier.
Right.
I want to talk about governance. What's your idea of kind of governance and what's good about governance? And then give me some examples of how you might implement best practice.
Okay. So when we talk about governance, actually, we talk about how you can put the guardrails so that the business, when they run their use case, it's running the application, they do not get into the position where, something unexpected happening, because you have these guardrails to prevent it. And to come to the real world example, it's about, for example, if company operates in East US region,
Mhm.
and they want to make sure that they serve their customers which are located there, because that's their customer base. It doesn't make sense for them to deploy to Southwest Asia. Now, if they do that, their latency will go up
Correct.
and other things. But how you can prevent that? That's the question.
Mhm.
That's where policies and guardrails come in place. Currently, in Azure environment, we have a thing called Azure policies, and the name is so clear.
Mhm.
I'm glad that we are using Azure,
Oh
because in
yeah,
some
yeah.
other cloud solution
Yes.
providers, you have very fancy names, and they are not related to what they are doing.
Yeah, yeah. That's one really nice thing about
Yeah.
Azure. The name of the resource tells you
Yes,
what
you
it is.
just go to portal, you type the name of what you need, and it's a standard name from
Mhm.
industry. You will get the service for it,
Yep.
so you don't have to guess. What you're trying to get there.
Other
That's the
clouds
good
is not
part
as
of
easy.
it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Okay. So that was like smallest example that I started. It's
Mhm.
about guardrail, and yeah. So what I was saying, that to prevent that, then you just write the policy and you base that on the scope, because maybe one project is based on the East US region, but maybe your company developing another project which is targeting the Western Europe, right? Then you want to make sure that your resources are deployed into that region. And the reason is simple. It's all about latency, right? So you want to make sure the services that you provide to your customers are the closest in terms of location where they are.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of policy demos and things
Yeah.
like that when I'm doing work on Intercept. One of the other examples are I'm probably going to slag developers
Mhm.
here, but sometimes in the development environment, developers have access to a lot of things and they can deploy expensive virtual machines.
Yes, correct.
And we've all done it. We've all spun up an expensive resource
Yes.
and we've left it running. So with Azure policy, you can say things like this environment, no one can spin up an expensive virtual machine.
Yeah.
So you could also say you can only deploy to this region.
Correct.
So policy is all about trying to keep the guardrails in place, shift everything left, which means put all these policies and good practices in at the start. Not everyone does that, and we can talk about that in a bit. But
Yeah.
the idea is you put all the good practices, the policies,
And I will just add
Mhm.
something there. So when we speak about policy, don't think from the perspective of security as well.
Yep.
Because when you provision the resource, you have to configure them in accordance to the security practices that your company and industry is following. So policies are the best way to enforce them, because they will automatically scan the resource and make sure that those configurations are in place. And if they are not, they are going to prevent that from happening in the first place, or whatever you decided as a process in the company, it will follow that.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to say that policies are very important. Azure governance is important in general. You can add it in after the fact. That's called Brownfield. So Greenfield is a brand new project. So you want to put all the good best practices in at the start. But sometimes we have customers who have got an Azure environment and they don't have that in play. So that's called Brownfield. And you can do that, but it's a little bit more awkward. You can put the good practices in later and then kind of bend it to follow these best practices, but it's always easier to do
Yes.
greenfield and upfront. Yeah.
And I want to just add that sometimes, as technical people, we very excited to deploy and try new things. But in fact, in the industry, wherever you end up, you see that there's already deployed infrastructure, there's already running workloads,
Yeah.
and you have to manage them. And in order to bring this infrastructure as a code, a culture and policy, you need to know the way how to work on the brownfield and how you can modernize the environment in a way that it is following the infrastructure as a code policies.
Mhm.
So keep that in mind, because infrastructure as a code policy and going with that culture doesn't mean that it needs to be greenfield. It takes a bit more steps on a brownfield, but it is definitely worth it because it will help you sleep much healthier in the nights.
Which is always good to have to be able
Yes.
to sleep, not get any phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, no, nobody's happy to grab those
Yeah,
calls,
yeah.
right?
We've always got to look after the support people.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, okay. And the next thing I wanted
Yes.
to talk about to you is like community and
Mhm.
what does community mean to you? So we're obviously Microsoft MVPs.
Right.
We've been MVPs for
For
quite
some
a
time.
lot of time. But what does being a Microsoft MVP mean to you?
Actually, the first thing that means to me is the community, and you learn that by by being within this great people that are part of this MCT community, including the leadership that's managing that. Uh, my understanding, it's a being belonging to a community where you are trying to help the learners, where you are trying to help the customers, and where you are trying to help to the services, the Microsoft teams, to better their products, because at the end goal they are trying to serve the customers who are using the services.
No, I would agree. Yeah, yeah. So for me, it is all about community. That's the kind of key word. Giving back.
Yeah.
I was really lucky when I was younger. I had a very good manager who said, when you learn things, your job is to kind of help the people, the junior people coming behind
Yes.
you, and then share your experiences
Hmm.
and share the good and the bad, and try and help people start in their career. People are always asking me, how do you start?
Yes.
You just have to kind of figure it out as you go, and try and sometimes finding a mentor is
Yeah.
quite a good bit of advice. But
Great.
yeah, for me, being an MVP is all about giving back what I've learned over the years and trying to help people get to wherever they want to go as well, and give them advice. Yeah.
And the way how you help the people, it's not, it can sometimes customers, but sometimes it's might be another person, technical person,
Mhm.
who faces a problem and they're searching for a solution. And if you face with the same problem, you blogged about it, they can find it easily.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started becoming an MVP, I think the blog posts that I started off with a blog, so I didn't have any Azure knowledge at all, and I thought, right, I'm going to figure out my plan was I'm going to sit some Azure exams and use that as learning. So I thought other people behind me are going to be doing these exams,
Yes.
so I'm going to go from an absolute noob who knows nothing about this. I'm going to blog what I did to try and pass these exams and learn the knowledge. Now we can talk about passing exams and how that works in terms of knowledge, but
Yeah.
I had no knowledge to begin with. So I thought,
Okay.
I'm going to go to like Microsoft Learn, I'm going to read the documentation, and then I'm going to try and see if I can pass the exam. And that focus, that made me mentally focus on the content of what I wanted to learn. And I think that's important to have some sort of goals. My goals were, I'm a developer.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the 2 developer exams. I failed them the first couple of times because I had no real hands-on experience.
Right.
And it's like you can
Filling the gap, right? It's
yeah,
kinda
you
like,
can learn to fly a plane by reading a
yeah,
book, but if you sit in the cockpit, you're not going to be able to fly a plane. It's the same with a car. So
100%.
you need hands-on experience. So get in the cockpit of the plane and then try things and bend things. It's the same with Azure, for example.
Yeah.
Get a student account or an account and then play around with it. Learn how to do things. Learn how to break things, and have some sort of goal. Was always advice I followed.
And another thing I just want to share, that don't be afraid to fail. The failure is a part of the learning.
Correct.
Keep that in mind. It's a part of the journey. I try to emphasize to the cloud marathon community that I'm happy to lead. Keep in mind that if you are failing, you are actually gaining experience. That's what it means. And in some cultures, in some companies, it's actually celebrated. One of them is Ethereum Solutions, where I'm gladly, helping the people and customers. But keep in mind that the learning is actually something that you overcome challenges. You basically hit the wall, you hit the
Mhm.
problems. That's how you grow. That's how you
Yeah.
grow your expertise. That's how you help your customers.
I've actually got a good example of that.
Yeah.
So when I started doing these exams,
Mhm.
I had no idea what I was doing.
Of course.
So if I sat the practice tests, I would do 50 questions and I would be getting 2 or 3 correct and 47 wrong.
Okay.
And then at the first time I failed the exam, I think I got 51% or something like that.
Yeah.
So I've now got 51% of knowledge that I did not have,
Yeah.
and I've got something to gauge it. And by doing the tests and the practice exams, you figure out what you're good at and what you're not good at. But
Right.
then over time, I eventually passed the exams, and then I've moved on from there. But yeah.
And I'll be honest, it's all takes your effort. You gain the confidence by making your preparation.
Mhm.
And I also want to mention that, certification doesn't mean that you'll get experience. Certification means that actually you will follow a guided path to cover the technology. But while using that technology, failing on that and learning how it's supposed to be used and what's the proper use case to use that, that's how you became, experienced in that. That's how you get experience. So these are, however, the best way to start that if you never did that is, of course, following the pass of certification if there is one.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to ask you, Elkan,
Yes.
is I get asked this question a lot. Where do you start if you want to become an Azure? Sorry, where do you start if you want to become an MVP?
MVP.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question, and each of you might be interested to learn about that. My understanding that the place where you want to become MVP is start sharing your passion. So whatever you are learning, whatever you find useful, and wherever you are failing, go and share that. I know most people are sharing the success stories,
Hmm.
but don't be afraid to share your failures, because by sharing that, you are going to help somebody else to to get a solution for that failure. So that's why don't be afraid about that. Share your failures and share what you are learning, and that would give you passion in terms of what you are doing. It will make you expert, and over time you may get recognition from the existing Microsoft MVPs, or maybe from Microsoft themselves, where they see that potential in you and invite to be part of the program.
Hmm. Yeah. Even last night, someone was asking me on LinkedIn, how do I become an MVP? So the first thing I would always say is you need to have some sort of knowledge.
Yes.
Don't need to be an expert, but you need to
No.
have some sort of knowledge, and it's all about helping the community. So giving back. And the one thing that people kind of fail at is they always say, "I don't want to blog about this topic because someone else has already done it." And to me, that's not the way you should go. You might experience the whole thing completely different. You should
Yeah.
always blog about your experience of what you think this does or this topic's about, because your opinion's important. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I blogged about doing exams because I wanted to give back that I struggled with them, and and it was a failure to begin with, but I actually got a success from the failure because I knew
Yeah.
that eventually I was going to pass this exam. So I didn't want to just say I've sat these exams and passed them, and here's how I did it, because that's a little bit that's not real life, because people fail exams, and yeah, that's part of learning.
And I will just add into that, like while you are failing, you are actually it's okay to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. That's where you are taking a calculated risk to become successful in the future. None of the people became successful if they were afraid to try something. So be brave, try it. And actually, if you look at DevOps culture, it's all about failing fast
Fail
so that you
fast,
can
yeah,
learn faster. You can prevent costly, fixes and stuff like that.
yeah.
So fail fast, iterate, don't be afraid to try new things. Experimenting eventually will make you expert in that technology. And that's what it is. And, once you share all those things, right? Your failures and everything, that's, where you are growing your expertise. That's where you are helping the community. And that's where, people will see you as an expert because you know the topic that you are talking about.
Yeah, I would agree on
Exactly.
that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would agree on that. One question I have
Mhm.
is do you feel that what's the main benefit of you becoming an MVP? Do you think it's worth people? I know the answer to this, but
Yes.
what's the benefits of becoming an MVP in terms of just becoming an MVP?
MVP.
What personal experience have you got on
Oh man,
what's your highlights of becoming an MVP?
that's a hard question, because there's a lot of ways that you can answer it. But from my perspective, it's all about, you have a passion. Like before you start that path, it doesn't need to be directly tied up to become MVP, because then you are going to be maybe frustrated.
Yeah,
I did this
yeah.
and that. Why I'm not becoming MVP? And I saw a couple of people who were in that path. And
Hmm.
my recommendation to them was, hey, you don't have to be doing that to become an MVP. Wherever your passion is, follow your passion, because your end goal is to become an expert, learn that things, help to the people in the community, or help your customers in achieving their goals. So if you move in that direction, eventually, you will get recognized. It may be, a roadmap of 3 years. It can be roadmap of 5 years, or maybe 6 months. It depends. But what important part is there, that follow your passion. It shouldn't be a burden for you. and then people will recognize your value, community will recognize your value, and hopefully you will get in that stage that MVP is going to be basically just an addition to the achievements that you receive by following your passion.
Yeah, I think passion is an important thing. My passion was learning. I'm one of these people who wants to learn everything. So when I worked at JP Morgan, they had this concept of being a T-shaped developer.
Yeah,
The idea is you go deep in one topic and
right.
you kind of know a little bit about the rest. That some people want to be deep in one topic only, and that's totally fine. So it doesn't really just follow whatever you're passionate about. My passion is I wanted to learn Azure
Hmm.
because at that time cloud was becoming a big thing. So I went deep into Azure, became an Azure architect. But I still know a little about a lot of things
Hmm.
because I'm the kind of person that wants to know how does that work.
Yes,
I've just got a passion for learning, so I kind
right.
of just focus on one thing. So different people do different kinds of learning, but if you're passionate about something, it's much easier to get on
Agree.
board with. People always ask me, "What should I become an MVP in?" And I'm like, "Well, follow your passions."
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just add into something to that. When you follow your passion, and learning is something that you need to have in place because there will be always change in the technology. Like just look at AI, right? So
Oh yeah.
nobody would expecting that to roll out so fast and be so influential. But being ready for the change, have this interest to learn and apply this will keep you on top of your game, and it will also help the people who are following you. So it's really, really helpful to do that. That said, uh, I want to switch the topics here a little
Go for it.
bit and let's go into the, you know, LinkedIn and social community and interaction part of it, right? So when you look at that, how you can tell that how these sharings help your career, how you basically shaped up the community that you are leading. For example, you are known as Azure Greg. So what made you Azure Greg? What helped you to become one?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I my passion at that time was learning about Azure, and I would think I'm thinking again. I need to give back, so I would learn a topic and I would just blog about what I've
Yeah,
learned. Because when you start blogging about a topic, you need to know what you're talking about. Well, you need to kind of fill in the
you need to
gaps.
know your stuff,
Yeah, there's
basically.
always gaps. So you
Yeah,
think if I'm going to write about this, I need to kind of know what I'm talking about
right.
to a certain extent. You don't need to be a real deep
No,
expert on it, but you kind of need to know how to explain something to someone
right.
who's trying to learn that. So, my big sister Heather, who she always taught me from young, try and people network.
Yeah,
So it's not always about who you know or things like that. It's just all about build your own community. Find the people who are passionate about the same topics that you are. So I was passionate about Azure. The first thing I would do is go into LinkedIn and find anyone who's anything to do with Azure.
awesome.
If they're an MVP, I would go and follow them. I would speak to them. I would get to know them. And I'm fairly well known because I go out of my way to try and introduce myself to people
Sure.
and like yourself, and we live on opposite sides of the
Yeah.
world and we know each other for like 10, 15 years. So yeah, LinkedIn is very good for sharing your content. There's targeted audiences, so people who share the same passion as you
Yeah,
will come across your posts and things like that. And it's a great way to blog. It's a great way to get content out, even if you
definitely.
YouTube, no matter what. And it's just a good way to meet lots of people who share the same sort of thing.
Yes. Another thing about LinkedIn Learning and everything, maybe you may be sometimes discouraged, right? You may share a post or something, but you may not get that viral kind of
Hmm.
response, hundreds likes, I don't know, reshares.
Yeah.
So keep in mind that, those people who are getting those type of interactions, they had a pre-work. They maybe invested like 3 years, 4 years of their career, how to understand the interests of the community, what they're expecting, what type of interactions they should expect, and how the content itself needs to be delivered, right? So they
Yeah.
become expert in that. That's why they get that traction. So for me, for example, if I would start from day zero and I would say naively saying that, hey, I'm going to share this something about Azure Bicep and I will get like 1,000 likes, that's just not going to happen,
Hmm.
and reason is because you should not start with the end goal of likes or shares. I believe as a passionate person, you should start with the end goal, how I can help the people. Or I had this problem and here's, effective way to solve it. Let me share that. So if you start from that end goal that you want to help others also overcome those challenges that you overcome and you're showing the solution there, that would help the people. And then people will really like your content. Then you will get the traction. And over time, you can reach your, desired numbers.
Hmm. One of the best people you can learn from is Scott Anselman,
Yeah,
who we all know. Scott, most
he's a
people,
legend.
yeah, he's an absolute
He's a
legend.
legend.
So Scott Anselman always talks about consistency. His podcast has
Yeah.
been every single Thursday for, I don't know, 6, 7 years, possibly. I think he's up to like 800, 900, maybe even more than that
Yeah.
episodes. Be consistent. So if you're going to blog, most people start a blog and then it tails off. I'm
Yeah.
guilty of that, but
Yeah, it kind of fades down
yeah,
later on, you know.
yeah, you get busy. But the idea here is don't do it for fame or
Yeah.
and being viral. That's not a thing. Just do it because you're passionate about doing it. Don't force it. If you're not wanting to do it, then don't try to become something that you're not passionate about. So
Yeah,
yeah.
try not to imitate that. No, don't fake
Mm-hmm.
out your behavior or passion because people would know it. People would feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So try to be really genuine about your passion. Then you would get the traction. Otherwise, believe it or not, you can fake it once or twice, but on the third one, people will feel that, and then you'll broke that trust between you and the people who are trying to follow and learn from you, and then you will just, uh, basically lose all that investment, all that time that you put into that. So that's why we are generally believe in passion, finding that one and amplifying that to the users, to your community members. It can be also customers. Now, when we say users, it doesn't need to be always online. Even on your workplace, once you generally approach to help your customers and you are not faking that, you will build the trust. You'll become a leader in long term. And that's the lesson when you deal with most of the people here. At the end of the day, as Greg said, in the beginning when you start with IT and technology in mind, meaning you want to be technical. But the more you do this work, you understand it's a people business. IT is actually people business because you want to help the people. You want to help the people to succeed in their business. That's why you are there. That's why IT is there. And that mindset will definitely, grow your career. Will make you over time a leader, trusted leader, and as well as, a well-known community member because, people will like what you're sharing. They will find it helpful and they will come back to you.
Couldn't put it better. Yeah, that was some eloquent words. Yeah, yeah. I always hark back to a previous manager who took me under his wing and told me and showed me how to be professional and
Yeah.
showed me how to do things correctly. And I still thank him to this day that I was brought up with good principles and then help people behind me. So we would
Nice.
always, like, when junior people start at our company, I'm always like, do you need a hand if you've got any questions?
Yeah.
Being that kind of person is all about community, even at work.
Yeah.
Be the person who people are comfortable reaching out to. And yeah.
Yeah, be yourself.
Yeah.
Don't try to imitate anyone. Each of you has a unique experience and unique differentiator that you will find your community with the passion, genuine passion that you have in yourselves, and that would drive your success. We
Yeah.
believe in that.
One last thing I would kind of like to add
Yeah.
is you might end up like us meeting each other in person
Yeah.
halfway across the world. Like
Yeah.
when we come to the MVP summit, there's MVPs from all around the globe come
Yes.
together, and it's people with passion like Elkan that I can get to meet and spend time with, which is absolute win-win. There's so many amazing people at the MVP summit. It's the highlight of the year for me, and I just love coming here and talk and doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, and before we finalize our session, some of you who are watching now, you might be interested. You might be interesting to know how I can reach back to Azure Greg or how I can reach back to Cloud Marathon, which is me, Elhan. What do you suggest for these people? How they can, do that?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn, I think. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, people use Twitter or X, but that seems
Right.
to be kind of dying off slowly. So,
Yeah.
yeah, if you reach out to Gregor Sutty on LinkedIn, you can find me there. The same for you, I would imagine.
Yes,
Yeah.
you can actually go to the Google and type Cloud Marathoner.
Mhm.
You will find me there. And the same with the Greg. Just
Yeah.
type Azure Greg, you will find him. And again, like in the beginning of my passionate journey of sharing the sharing the technical stuff, mostly in infrastructure as a code and Azure learning, I find your contributions to the community very inspireful. And when I see the Azure Greg, I can know it's kind of interesting alias, what it means, and then over time, more I learn about you, about your contributions. And by the way, Greg is actually organizing the Festive Tech Calendar event at the end of the year, it's around like November month or so. If you are passionate about becoming a speaker, or you have a blog post that's you want to share with community, reach back to him. There will be no sign up, so it's really awesome place. I try to contribute each year. And in addition to that, I encourage other MVPs to basically become a partner in crime with me so we can organize one session together, and we can have this, value given back to the users who are interested in that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, I need to give a shout out to you as well. How can you do the Cloud Marathon? Or can you tell people about what that is and how often you do that?
Yes, so I also lucky to be one of the co-organizers of the Cloud Launch and Learn, which is the bi-weekly sessions that we organize with uh, a great set of Microsoft MVPs and community leaders. Hugo Barona is actually, one of the great leaders there. We also have uh, other team members who are contributing. And what I want to say is that if you are new as a speaker, but you are passionate about sharing something that's very useful, please reach out, type Cloud Launch and Learn, or reach back to me if you have any idea, or you want to become a new speaker. We are passionate to bring new speakers today. It's a bi-weekly sessions, right? It's happening there. Sometimes you would see me there moderating and helping you to do that presentation. Sometimes it could be Hugo or some other, team member that we are running this. But this is very helpful to enable, give you platform for new learners to share your passion and become your dream expert that you want to become one.
Brilliant. How long have you been doing that for?
The Cloud Launch and Learn, it's been almost like 5 years plus,
Well,
something
that must
like
be a
that.
lot of people who you've had on.
Yes, there was a lot of a number of people that I moderated. And here's the thing, when you interact those people and those, you learn about other people's and their passions, it give an element of another passion ignition to yourself.
Uh-huh.
So you can, go even further, even faster, and with more, I would say, love in that.
Yeah, gives you a lot of energy.
It is
Yeah, that's
definitely
one reason I do
100%.
it. Yeah. So the thing that I do is throughout the month of December,
Mm-hmm.
it's called the Festive Tech Calendar. You run the Festive Tech Calendar is to give people who have never created any content before an opportunity to take part in an event. So if you sign up, you will automatically be accepted. So you always get accepted every year if you sign up for it. And you do a blog post or a video. And if you ever need help with either of that, we're here to help. And it gets your name out in the community. Every single day we have new content from new people all around the world, and you get a bit of 15 minutes of fame, a little bit of spotlight.
Yeah, before we finalize this, I want to say thank you for taking time and watching this session. I
Yeah.
hope it will answer some of the questions that you had in mind when you started watching our video. But if it is not, we are available. We are on LinkedIn. Don't hesitate to reach back to us. We'll try to help you. And as well as I want to say big thank you for the organizers of this, DevRel here in Microsoft. We
This
are
has
in the
been brilliant.
Redmond office. It's a great facility, and we are thankful for this opportunity to share those, I would say, success tips, so to speak, right? If I'm not wrong,
Yeah.
success tips with everyone here, because we would like you to become successful as well. And that's, how we can give back to the community. Thank you for watching us.
Thank you. Good luck.
Have a great day, guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.